Netherlands. Maybe it might still be morning from wherever you are joining. Glad that you guys could make the time to join this webinar about some general information about Han. I will start with that. And later on, Viktor will share his journey basically as an international student studying at Han. My name is Sam. I'm an international marketing and communication officer. One of my colleagues, Olesia Bobko, is present in chat. She will answer some questions of you guys in the meantime. However, in the end, we do have a Q&A, so you can also wait until the end, or she will save the questions so we can answer them later on. Viktor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Viktor Georgiev. I am a fourth year life sciences student at the Han. I am originally from Bulgaria and I have been living here in the Netherlands in Nijmegen for 4 years already. A bit more about myself. I always wanted to do something with biology and science in general. Unfortunately, there aren't many places where I can do it practically in my home country. So when I was in the 11th grade, that's around age 17, 18, I made up my mind that I want to go somewhere abroad to study, and I chose the Netherlands, particularly because of the very practical education that you can get here. So after my studies, after I'm done with my bachelor's, I am thinking of going on to do a master's degree and eventually a PhD in biomedical science. And my dream job would be to work in a research institute and really work on applying biology to medicine.
Sounds really cool. Thank you. Um, I will start with a quick introduction about Han, what Han basically is. Well, we're University of Applied Sciences located in the Netherlands in Arnhem and Nijmegen. I will tell a little bit more about these cities later on. We're actually one of the largest universities of applied sciences in the Netherlands. We outgrew Arnhem, the city in which it all began, and we expanded in Nijmegen, and we have lots of programs in Nijmegen as well right now. The two cities are pretty well connected. It's only a 20-minute train ride from Arnhem Central Station to Nijmegen Central Station. But basically, if you study in one of these cities, you will stay there, live there, and do your thing there. In total, we do have 37,000 students studying at Han, and 3,000 of these students are international students from 120 different nationalities. At Han, we do offer 90 different programs, and 15 of these programs are English taught. We do have international social work, chemistry, life sciences, automotive engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical and electronic engineering, embedded systems engineering, communication, international business, the master molecular life sciences, and the master engineering systems, and the five different tracks that belong to that master. So lots of different areas in which you can be interested. The slide is showing the map of the Arnhem campus. As you can see, we have 4 different buildings at Arnhem campus. All these buildings are for educational purposes, so there are no students living on campus. And the same applies to the Nijmegen campus. You can see that on the right side. And we have 5 different buildings, and they're also all for educational purposes. As I just mentioned, we are a University of Applied Sciences. Well, what that exactly implies is in the Netherlands, we do have 2 different kinds of universities. We have the University of Applied Sciences and the Research University. If you study at the University of Applied Sciences and you go for a bachelor degree, that will be 4 years instead of 3 years at a research university. For a master degree, that's between 1.5 to 2 years, and at the research university, on average, it will take you 1 year for a master's degree. The biggest difference is that you will, of course, still get a lot of theory. A lot of things will be told to you by lecturers, but we also really want to see how you're going to work with the theory that we just told you. So our lecturers will, you have to show our lecturers how you're going to work with what they told you by doing that in practice. So if you are, for example, a life science student like Viktor is, a lot of work will be done in the labs, and that you can show that you understand what has been told to you, and that you know how to work with it, because this is what you will be eventually be doing if you are working in the professional field later on. Besides the theory and the practice, you will also do an internship of 6 months, and you will do your thesis is a graduation project that you will do for a company as well. So also kind of internship and work experience that you will already gain throughout your study period. And this is also why we need 1 extra year if you compare the bachelor degrees to each other, which makes it 4 years instead of 3 years. Lots of the work and study that you will do will be projects and group work. So not a lot of individual study, of course, also a bit, but you'll work a lot together with other students. At a research university, it's more focused on developing your competences based on the academic and research skills, and there's a lot more independent study. There's no good or fault in this one. You just have to decide what works best for you. And then the application procedure. If you decide to study at Han, it's good to know what you need to pay for it, of course. If we talk about European students, on average, you have to pay around 2,000 euros a year for a degree program at Han. This was for the current academic year. It may differ a little bit for the years after, but it's always around the same amount. Non-European students, for a technical degree program, they pay almost 9,000 euros a year. And for a non-technical degree program, so international business, communication, etc., you will pay around 7,500 euros a year. This is because we need a little bit of extra money for the materials you will work with for a technical degree program in the labs, etc. The application deadlines, if you're an EU student, you should apply for the 15th of August if you want to start in September, and the 15th of January if you want to start in February. Non-European students, they should apply a little bit earlier on. If you want to do a bachelor's and start in September, you should apply for the 1st of June. For the master, it should be the 1st of June as well. Except for the Master Molecular Life Sciences, then you should apply before the 1st of May. If you want to start in February, that's only available for some of our bachelor's programs, not all of them. You should apply before the 1st of November. I will show a quick animated video explaining how our application procedure look like. You just need to switch between the presentation and the video.
Would you like to study at Han? In 88 seconds, we explain the steps you need to take to apply for a program at Han. Want to join us for a moment? You apply on StudyLink and follow the various steps. Too early is better than too late, but do it at least before the application deadlines. Within 1 week of applying, you automatically receive an email about how to create a Han account. Once you've done that, our admissions office emails you to let you know everything we need from you. Send the details to the admissions office. Do you need to do an English proficiency test? As soon as you've scheduled it, let us know the date. Don't have all the info yet? No problem. Send us the info you do have. For example, your grades list instead of your degree certificate. When everything is complete, Han assesses your admission. If everything is in order, you receive an email with the result of your application. Did you get a positive result? Then continue with the following steps. You're halfway there. We invite you for a matching session. That's an online interview where we check whether the program matches your wishes and interests. If you are then accepted, all that is left is to pay your tuition fees. Congratulations, you're now a Han student. There are still lots of things to do before you actually start studying, such as housing and planning your trip. So, right on time. Did you know that you can track the progress of your application in My Han portal? Good luck and see you soon at Han. Questions? Go to hanuniversity.com/admission.
Okay, then we'll switch back to the presentation. This one. Then there is still a little bit of information remaining for non-European students. European students, they hang in there. Victor will continue the conversation after this sheet. If you're a non-European student, you do need a visa in order to come and study in the Netherlands. In the entire country, universities have to apply for your visa and residence permit on your behalf. So after applying for a program at Han, our admission office and our immigration department will reach out to you, and they will ask you all the information to hand in all the document and information they need, and then they will go to the IND and make sure that everything will be arranged. Something that is a bit different for non-European students, that they have to pay the financial guarantee. The financial guarantee is something that we need for the IND to prove that you can actually afford studying and living in the Netherlands. So that's a total package that you have to pay to the university, and it includes the tuition fees, housing, because we do offer accommodation for non-European students in their first year, living expenses, and some extra fees. So this has to be paid every year. Then we have scholarships available for non-European students. Well, because they have to pay the financial guarantee, and as you saw in the tuition fees sheet, it's a bit more expensive for non-European students. So we do only offer scholarships for them. If you're eligible, our admission office will invite you to join our scholarships selection process. So first you have to apply for a program at Han. And if you're a non-European student, if this is your first degree at the University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, if you're doing one of our full-time English taught degree programs, and if you have an IELTS score of at least 6.5 or equivalent, then our admission office will reach out to you and ask you to join the selection process. They will do that by asking a motivation letter from you, a short video, and your CV. And based on that, our scholarships committee will review your application for scholarships process. That applies for the Han Holland scholarship. The amounts that are shown on the sheet are for the total amount that you will receive during your studies. If you missed the boat, then you can still get an honor scholarship. That's only for students who did an excellent job in their first year of studying. The academic board will evaluate all the students after the first year of studying, and then they will pick out a few students who did excellent, and they will receive the honor scholarship. That's for the remaining time of their studies, and these amounts shown are for the entire duration of the study. Then we do have the two cities in which we are located. As you can see on the map, Arnhem and Nijmegen are very closely located. We're also very close to the German border, and Belgium is not that far away. If you think about transportation towards Amsterdam, public transportation will take you from Arnhem 1 hour and from Nijmegen 1 hour and 20 minutes. So everything is pretty close by. I will tell a little bit about Arnhem. Arnhem has a very entrepreneurial spirit. It has lots of green surroundings, especially our campuses. It's located in the middle of a park. It's a fashion city. It's very well connected to the other cities in the Netherlands. So if you want to explore other cities or do fun things in the weekend, you can absolutely see more than only Arnhem. And it's a very cozy city to live in. There are a lot of international students living in Arnhem, since most of our international English taught degree programs are located in Arnhem. And Victor, I know you live in Nijmegen, so maybe you want to share some information about Nijmegen.
Yes, gladly. So Nijmegen is considered the oldest city in the Netherlands, and as such, there are many historical buildings in the city, some Roman ruins, and also a very neat historical museum in the center that I would definitely recommend visiting. And similarly to Arnhem, it has a lot of green surroundings. So one of my favorite things to do, for example, is walk in the countryside around the city, and also the beach, which is very close to the center. It has a very creative vibe as a city, and it's a very typical student city, since besides Han, there's also another university. So there are many students here, and also many places where you can where students go to socialize, so clubs, events, and so on. And one particularly interesting event are the 4-day marches that are held every summer. These are 4-day long walking marathons. So you walk every single day for about 40 kilometers, and you pass through different towns and villages in the area, and people greet you in their festivals and parties in the evenings. I have not yet attended the 4-day marches, but it's on my bucket list, I can tell you that.
Great. Yeah, of course, due to COVID, it didn't happen the past 2 years, but this year it will happen again.
Yeah, yeah.
Then this was all, well, a bit of some general information about Han. Victor, you can just start your journey and tell us how you experienced everything as a student at Han.
Gladly. So first, I'll tell you a bit about what it's like to study abroad in general. So why did I choose the Netherlands? I already mentioned that in the introduction that um, the level of education is quite high in Europe. And here in the Netherlands, there's a particular focus on the practical side of education. So that was very appealing to me. Also, of course, the tuition fees are quite appealing since many European countries have quite high tuition fees that are sometimes a bit prohibitive. And also, the cost of living is attractive. So you can live with a quite good standard here. And why did I choose Han in particular? Well, because it's an applied sciences university, and as such, the practicals play a crucial part. So there's a more or less 50-50 split between theory and practice, and with each year, the practice becomes more and more, and you really learn things in a real world setting. So things that you would apply later on in your job. Now, when you arrive here, you might be very excited, and that's normal. And it's additionally much better if you're also surrounded by motivated people, and you can definitely find people like that here at the Han. There are people from all over the world that have really come here with the objective of getting as much as possible from this experience and really being the best at what they do. So if you thrive in such an environment, that would be perfect. And perhaps in the beginning you would experience some doubts. I know for myself that I definitely did. In the beginning, I was doubting whether I made the right choice, if this is really what I want to do, if this is the right school for me. And that's completely normal in the first semester, especially if you've come from abroad and you already did so much to get here. It's normal to feel these doubts. So I would say if you ever have them, don't be too concerned about it. It's normal to have these doubts. Um, One thing that will help you fit in would be the orientation week, which is held just before the start of the academic year, so in the end of August. The last couple of years, because of COVID, of course, most of the events were online events. So it wasn't exactly the same experience, but I can tell you from my orientation week that it was a very nice experience. That's really where you can meet your future colleagues in a more informal environment, make some of your first friends there, and also it's practically very very useful because there Han does a good job at explaining what you need to do practically. Like for example, open a Dutch bank account, register at the municipality, how to get around with public transport. All of these things are explained in the beginning. And of course, when you make your important decisions, for choosing the Han, it's good to get advice from third parties. For example, that's what I did when I applied. I used this one company based in Bulgaria, which helps students apply for Dutch universities and universities of applied sciences, and they did a great job with helping me apply. Prepare all of my documents and so on. So if you have something like that available where you are, I would definitely recommend using that. Now, I will tell you a bit more about the whole preparation process. So, as I said, I had help with handing in the documents, And since I really wanted to be ahead of things, start early, I started probably somewhere in January with all the documents. That's super early. You can do it also now. It's not late, so don't worry about that. And as you know, by that point, you won't have your diploma yet, most likely. But I applied with the transcript of records, and only later on had to hand in a translated copy of my diploma. So at first, you're conditionally admitted with that transcript of records, with which you prove that you studied the necessary subjects, you have some good level of experience, and only then you need the diploma. Same also goes for the language certificate. You can hand it in at a later point. I made my early on, so already had it. Now, about the practicalities, for example, when to arrive. As I mentioned, there's an orientation week just before the start of the academic year. I would recommend arriving a few days before that. 2 weeks is maybe too early, but at least a few days before the start of the orientation week. Or if you decide to not attend the orientation week for one reason or another, I would still recommend being here about a week before the start of the academic year, because you have to do so many um, bureaucratic things, like go to the municipality and register there, the opening of the bank account that I mentioned. These things are good to do before the academic year really picks off, because once you start studying, you just won't want to deal with these things. And also, it would be good to just adjust a bit, not arrive today and have your first classes tomorrow. um, Now, next on the housing, that's quite an important issue. In my case, the first year, that company that helped me hand in my documents also helped me apply for student accommodation. There's this one company that maintains student buildings here in the area, and I got a room there. I was living in a corridor with 8 other people, and we were sharing a kitchen, a washing machine, toilets, but everyone had their own room. So that was nice, some privacy. And I had a contract only for 1 year. And towards the end of that period, I started already looking for accommodation elsewhere, because after your first year, it gets more difficult to find a room via that company. The first year students had priority then. But thankfully, due to my personal networks, so my colleagues, my friends from school, I managed to find a room in a house, and I've been living there for almost 3 years now. I'm quite satisfied with it. Um, and the take-home message here is that you should definitely start as early as possible. I mentioned earlier that I started my application procedure for the Han in January, and part of the reason was because then, as soon as I got my acceptance letter, I could immediately start looking for housing. Since it's quite difficult, especially also with COVID, it becomes more and more difficult. Eventually, everyone will find a room sooner or later, but if you really want to take your time to make the right decision, it would be good to give yourself some time. Now, I think Sam would want to step in about the non-European students part.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Well, as I mentioned before, the non-European students do pay the financial guarantee. And the most common option there is to choose the financial guarantee, including housing. And because at a university, we can basically give away some rooms to our first year students, but we are very limited in the capacity that we have. So we had to give priority to non-European students. That means that we can arrange accommodation for them in their first year of studying at Han, because they are less familiar with the procedures and with how everything works in Europe. So if you're a non-European student and you choose the financial guarantee, including housing, Han will arrange accommodation for you in your first year. After that, you have to find your own accommodation. EU students, they have to start finding their accommodation just like Victor did from the beginning on. And however, they can apply for the waiting list. We do have a waiting list with a first in, first served base. So if we have some rooms left after all the non-European students got a room, then they will be divided over the waiting list. Of course, the earlier you apply, the higher your chances are. So I would advise you to send an email to the email address that my colleague is going to share in chat. Do that as soon as possible after you apply for a program at Han, and then you will raise your chances of getting a room. But don't wait until we gave you and told you the outcome, whether you will or won't get a room. Try to find your own accommodation in the meantime, because as Victor mentioned before, it's at this moment a challenge to find accommodation in the Netherlands that applies for the entire country, because there is a shortage. So you'll find something, but it will take some time. And with some time, we don't mean weeks, but it can take up to like 2 months before you actually find your accommodation.
Okay. So I will walk you through what an average week looks like for me. So first of all, big part are the classes. In the first year, we start off with two 3 to 4 hour long practicals every week. But with each subsequent year, the practical part becomes more and more. And by the time I did my major in the third year, I was in the lab more or less every day for at least 4 or 5 hours. Um, and I would say there are about 15 to 20 hours of theoretical classes. So lectures, tutorials, group-based projects, and so on. This might differ from program to program. So I'm just saying this from the perspective of a life sciences student, but this will more or less be what it would look like. The practical part will really be very substantial, and it will also require a lot of effort from your side, because the next point is the self-study, and this of course varies not only from program to program but also from person to person. Everyone will need a different amount of time. I personally spent around 10-15 hours a week, at least in the beginning I did. With time I became more efficient at studying and didn't waste that much time procrastinating, so eventually I cut it down to less. And a big part of that will be taken up by preparing for your practical classes. So, for example, for our lab practicals, we have to prepare lab journals in advance, and you will get kicked out if you don't have them filled in. So, they are important to prepare, and also you have to read up a bit, really get to know what you will be doing, and then afterwards you'll have to fill in your lab journal, explain what you did, analyze your results, and so on. And this really takes up more time than you would expect. At one point, that takes more time than actually studying for the exams. Um, Now, there's some individual work as well as group work. The group work is very important since Han places a lot of attention on teaching you not just the practical work skills, but also soft skills like interpersonal skills, being a good coworker, being professional, being able to communicate and resolve conflicts. So there will be a lot of assignments centered around that, which sometimes might seem a bit excessive, but trust me, in the end, you will definitely see where they come in handy. And of course, you might be thinking that you won't have any free time left, but you will have. Maybe the first few weeks will be a bit rough until you get into a routine, but after that, you can definitely have free weekends and so on. And there's a lot to do in Nijmegen and Arnhem. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite activities is just going on walks in the countryside, and I mean like 8 hour long walks, so hikes. And there's a lot of places where you can go just outside of Nijmegen and Arnhem. There's a beautiful park outside of Arnhem for those who live there. I also like to go to the beach with my friends. We sometimes have campfires there and barbecues, and just spend the whole afternoon and evening at the beach. And also, now that I live in a house that I share with other students, we have a backyard. And another chill activity that I like to do is just take care of the garden, take care of the flower and vegetable garden. This picture that you see here, by the way, is from Arnhem, from this one church tower where you can go up and stand in a glass box about 60 meters from the ground. That's one thing I did at the very beginning when I was in the first year. So here's a suggestion for your free time. Now, about the campus, these are all pictures from the Nijmegen campus. As you can see, there are a lot of wide open spaces with nice lawns where people sit in the summer. I've spent a lot of time there between lectures, so you can sit there alone or with your friends and just enjoy the time that you have. Also, all of the buildings are quite modern, and each faculty is unique. So each building has its own unique feeling. Most of your lectures will be restricted to one building, but you're completely free to explore the other ones. That's another thing I did in the beginning. Even to this day, I don't know all of the buildings at the Nijmegen campus that well. There are also pubs at the campus where you can go after classes with friends, another thing I like doing, and also musical rooms and art rooms where you are completely free to just walk in and use all of the art supplies or musical instruments, just play, teach yourself an instrument or some art form. A lot you can do. And regarding the atmosphere, I personally find it very pleasant. A big part of that comes from the people that you're with. So this is a piece of advice to try to get to know as many people as possible in the beginning and see which people are most pleasant to be around. So everything is better with good company. And as I said, there are many hidden places on campus and near the school that you can explore and relax in. So quite a lot to do. And now about the campuses and the English taught programs of them. At Nijmegen, we have the International Social Work campus that you can see in the leftmost picture. And you have the Natural Sciences. This is where I spent most of my time. Quite a nice building. And some maybe you can say a bit more about the Arnhem campus.
Yes, so these are three of the four buildings that we have in Arnhem. If you're going to study at the International School of Business, so International Business and Communication, you will study at the main building in Arnhem. That's Ruitenberglaan 31. If you're going to study an engineering program, you will be either way in Ruitenberglaan 26 or 29. Most of the time it differs, and you will be located in both of the campuses. It just depends on what lab class you have and in which building it is located. All three of them are pretty modern buildings, so the atmosphere in there is similar, but you can really tell the difference in the kind of students that are walking around, since the more the engineering students are hanging out together in engineering campuses, and the international business students are hanging out together in the international business campus, of course.
And yes, now a bit about the student life. Um, uh, where can you meet friends? That's probably one thing that you're wondering. And a lot of the friends that I made over the years were actually people that I lived with. So as I mentioned, in that student accommodation, I was living with 8 other people, and with some of them, I'm still friends today. And we meet, we hang out, but also the orientation week is the perfect opportunity to meet friends, since everyone there is still a bit awkward, new, that they don't know what to expect. So everyone is equally shy there. And it's a perfect opportunity to start a conversation by just asking people things about their country, where they come from, what brought them here. It's a good conversation starter. And of course, the parties that you have mostly in the first year, but also in subsequent years, they're a nice opportunity to meet people, to talk in a more relaxed environment. And of course, class. All of these group projects that we do over the years, when you spend hours and hours working with people on a project, eventually you grow closer and you find that you have other things to talk about. Now, the bottom line about my international student experience is that I quite frankly enjoyed it. I managed to meet people who made me feel at home, and I feel that I belong here. So I feel like I'm in the right place. If I have to point out one thing that I don't like about the experience, is that um, being a student is often very monotonous. So you go to your Monday to Friday lectures, you eventually study for exams, you have your exam period, you do your exams, pass, and then go on to the next term. So after a while, that can get a bit tiring, and that's just a universal feature of student life. But thankfully, there are exciting moments. You get to break up the routine a bit, especially when you start your internship. I was very much looking forward to that when I started my first one. That was a unique and different experience. So, uh, in the end, everything can be a very pleasant experience if you make it pleasant, if you surround yourself with people you like and you're actually excited to try things out. So that's my advice. And in conclusion, as I already mentioned, the thing I like the most is that I was lucky enough to meet nice people that I'm friends with. I least of all like the routine, but you can break that up from time to time. And am I still satisfied with my choice? Well, yes. I am almost at the very end of my study, so if I'm not satisfied by now, it would be bad. But I am satisfied with it. And um, if I think about how the Han contributed to me going forward, I can definitely say that all of the practical experience that I gained is indispensable when it comes to real life work. I can definitely see that I am better now at working in a lab. I understand what I am doing, and also another thing that was very important for me is that by gaining this practical experience, I got to see for myself if this is really the right thing for me. Because maybe you find something very interesting, but then you get to it, you try it out, and you see that it's not for you, and you try something else. In my case, I think I made the right choice. And I'm glad that Han gave me that opportunity to experience what it is being a researcher. And that's my conclusion.
Well, thank you very much, Victor. I think sharing your experience must have been a huge help and added value for all the people listening. Um, it's the end of our presentation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we can answer them either way via chat, or Victor and I will answer them for you. I just need to double check whether Alicia already forwarded me something. Yeah, regarding the matching procedures, people that applied and want to start in September, they should receive an invitation to join the matching activity at any moment. So our programs are sending out the invitations right now. And the only thing is, if you want to study life science or chemistry, they do handle a different approach. You will get notified about how they do it also somewhere right now. So if you just applied, you should receive something soon. And if you applied a while ago and you did not hear anything yet, you can send an email to ask@han.nl to make sure that, just to do a double check, because you should have received some messages right now. Is Dutch language mandatory for automotive engineering? Definitely not. That basically applies to all of our programs. Maybe, Victor, you can confess that Dutch is definitely not mandatory language to speak at all if you want to study in the Netherlands.
No, really not. There's so many programs in English, and also everyone speaks good enough English when you go outside.
Yeah, so we do offer some social Dutch classes in the beginning of your studies if you want to participate. It's not mandatory to do so. It's just so if you do your groceries, you can say hi, thank you, and what you want. However, if you don't know these words, it's also completely fine. And in your study itself, it's never necessary to speak Dutch. However, around 50% of your classmates will be Dutch students. They do, of course, all speak English since everything is given in English, but it's always nice to learn a few words Dutch from them as well.
See that there's a question about the housing. Should you address that one first?
Of course.
Yeah, so about the housing, in my first year when I applied, I had help from this company that aided me with the whole application procedure, and they also helped me with applying for a student accommodation. The student accommodations are maintained by a private company, so they have properties all over Nijmegen and Arnhem, and there I lived in a typical student building, sharing a corridor with 8 other people. I had my own room, fortunately, but we shared the kitchen, the toilets, the washing machine. That's more or less what it is. And I uh, wanted to point out that I applied very early on for Han, somewhere in January. And the purpose of that was that the moment that I got my um, admission letter, I could immediately start applying also for housing, because it takes a very long time to find a place. Especially now with COVID, it's becoming more and more difficult. At the height of the pandemic, it was really difficult. Sooner or later, everyone finds a place. I haven't heard really stories of people who end up without any place at all. But if you really want to get the best thing with the optimal price, I would definitely recommend starting at least 4 months in advance. Maybe that's a bit too paranoid, but it's better to be on the safe side, I would say. After the first year, my contract with the company expired, and I was looking for private accommodation. Um, I was looking through different websites. There are many websites where you can find ads, and especially after you have already been living in this country for several months, you are a bit more experienced, and you can actually go to the place that is being advertised to make sure that it's not a scam or something like that, because things like that can happen to anyone anywhere. And fortunately, in the end, I managed to find a place through my network. So friends of mine from school were looking for a housemate, and that's how I ended up in this one house where I have already been living for 3 years. So that's a very important resource. Your network, the people that you know, ask around, see who is looking for a housemate. It's very useful. But in the beginning, I would definitely recommend going rather for a student accommodation, because it's a bit more safe.
Thank you. Useful tips. Then there's a question about not being 18 yet and all the paperwork that has to be done before you can actually start studying once you're in the Netherlands. In general, there are not really some problems that occur when you have to do all this paperwork when you're not 18 yet. The only thing is that opening a Dutch bank account might be a challenge, and that's something that's very nice to have. I would say almost mandatory to have if you live in the Netherlands. Our international office will provide you from some help, and will make sure that they guide you throughout the entire process. That's also part of the orientation week. It's about getting to know your other students, getting to know other international students from other programs, getting to know the city you live in, but also get more information about all these paperwork things and things that has to happen before you can actually start studying. So during this week and a few weeks prior to it, we will send you some emails, and our international office will give you all the information during the orientation week as well. Then there's another question about exemptions from the English proficiency test. There are some exemptions. There is a list, and I have to search for it on our website. I will do that later on, so I can share it with you. But a few countries don't have to do the nationalities, I should say, don't have to do the English proficiency test. For example, if you're a native speaker, of course. However, grades do not influence this test. So even if you have an A in English, you should still do an English proficiency test. And I saw that, maybe you already answered the question, Victor, what the average cost of living are.
Yeah, about the average cost. Again, it really depends from person to person. but rent is usually in the range of 300 to 500 euros. There are cheaper places and more expensive places. Mine, for example, is cheaper, uh, but it's a rarity. And also the groceries and traveling costs. Again, it depends. If you live far away from school and you have to travel, for example, a whole hour, it will be more expensive. But generally, I would say 60, 70 to 80 euros per week. Again, might be more, might be less. Person, that's at least for me what I generally spend.
Okay, thanks. I can't find the list right now, but if you send an email to study@ham.nl, so that's only for the person who's looking for the list with exemptions for the English proficiency test, then I can send you the list back. When you apply for Han, will Han give a list of different houses you can choose from if you want to get accommodation offer? Yes, if you're a non-European student, you will receive a voucher, and if you have the voucher, you can enter that. It's an e-voucher. You can use the code written on the voucher to enter the Book Your Room website, and that website gives an overview of all the rooms that are available for non-European Han students. And you can see some information like where is it located, do I share my accommodation with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, how many people you will share it with, and some basic information is written down. Of course, also the price range, because there's a difference. If you want to live close to the city center, of course, prices will be a little bit higher. We do recommend you to, if you receive the e-voucher, to look at the website as soon as possible, because then the chances are higher that you will actually find something what serves all your needs for a decent price. So you can definitely choose what room is best for you. And Victor, maybe did you do a matching interview when you started studying here?
Yes, I did. I expected it to be like a stereotypical application interview where they ask you questions about your plans and so on. But it was actually much more laid back than that. It wasn't really stressful at all. They got us together with several other people to be in the same online meeting, and it was really more about seeing how we socialize with each other, how we uh, approach talking with a stranger. And it was an interesting experience. It was mostly just talking about what we expect to get from this experience, what our ideas for the future are. So it wasn't anything that stressful.
Okay, good to hear. That's at least what we heard back from students a lot, that it's just also a good opportunity to ask some additional questions to a student that's actually studying at your program. I see that we're running out of time, so if you have some more questions, drop them now, and then we will at least answer the final questions
I see
right
one
now.
about part-time jobs, and how difficult it is to find one as an international student. The most popular part-time job is delivering orders with your bike. That's what almost everyone that I know does. And it is popular because you don't need to know Dutch for that. It's very flexible. You can make your own hours. So if something like that suits you, then that's perfectly fine. Now, if you want to work in a restaurant or at a bar, then you would have to learn a bit Dutch. So that's something you should keep in mind. But also working at a warehouse, for example, you wouldn't require any Dutch. And so it's really not that difficult, at least for EU students. I think non-EU students need to apply for a work permit, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the employer has to apply for a work permit. Um, and then you also have a limited amounts of hours that you can work as a non-European student, but it's definitely possible. And since there are a lot of international students around in the neighborhood, companies do have experience with this, so they will do that for you. I think we have no new questions coming in. If we missed a question, I'm very sorry. You can copy and paste it in chat so we can still answer the question. In the meantime, Victor, are there any tips left that you want to give to the students that are listening right now?
Well, mostly just take your time with things because, as I said, application procedures and especially looking for housing takes time. So really don't leave it for the last moment. Give yourself a few months' time to be on the safe side, to really make sure that you're not forced to go for the first option you have. That's the most important advice that I can give. And experience-wise, I would say just be open to experiences when you come here.
Thank you. Well, thank you a lot for joining us today, Victor, and thank you for sharing your story.
My pleasure.
And I will wrap up this webinar. Recording should be sent to your email address. So if you want to rewatch and see everything what we told you, you can just look at the recording. And if you still have some questions left, you can always ask them at ask@han.nl. Thank you very much.